In this video, you'll learn how to add solid and image backgrounds to your HTML elements. Then, how to control your image background with 3 different properties. And you'll learn 2 most practical and widely used formats for colors in web, RGB and hex. So let's get started. First, I'm going to add a simple div element with the content backgrounds in CSS. We'll add a background to this div in a couple of seconds. Save the file, refresh the page. There you go, just a plain content. Now to add a background to this div, I'm gonna create a CSS rule where I'll use a tag selector. Inside the declaration block, I'll write background color. How about light sky blue? Save the file, refresh the page. Now this div has a nice blue background. The browser renders the background inside the content area of an element. And because div is a block level element, its content takes up all the width available. Let's increase the font size of the text inside this div with the font size property to a huge value, something like 250 pixels, so that the content area of this div would take more space. Save the file, refresh the page. There you go. Notice that the background area has increased with the content. Now in CSS, there are many ways to set the color we want. We've used keywords so far. They are easy to remember and work with for us humans. I'll show you 2 more popular ways among web developers to set the color. For that, we'll need a tool called Color Picker. Many programs have a color picker. We'll use the one from Google. So let's open a new tab and Google Color Picker. And there you go, a color picker. Here we can select any color we want and use its values in different color formats. We are interested in the hex and RGB formats here. They are most widely used and practical. RGB is for red, green, and blue. In RGB we have 3 numbers. Each sets the amount of red, green, and blue for our color. Now the hex format is short for hexadecimal, which is just a different way of representing numbers in math and programming. A color in the hex color format starts with a hash symbol, and then it's actually again the amount of red, green, and blue, just in the hexadecimal number format. In practice, you don't need to change these values manually. Just select the color you want in a color picker and copy its hex or RGB value. So to use this, let's select the color we like. What about a different shade of blue? Then I'll copy this hex value and I'm going to remove this keyword and paste the hex value I just copied. It's important to copy the value with the hash symbol and have the hash symbol at the beginning. Otherwise, it won't work. Save the file, back to our page, refresh it. There you go. Now our background color is a different shade of blue. Now let me show you how to use RGB colors. I'm going to pick a different color, something closer to orange. Now I'm going to follow the same path and copy everything under the RGB section. Then I'm going to go to VS Code and paste the values, save the file, back to our page, refresh it, and the background disappears completely. Now, when that happens, it means most likely that we put an invalid color value, and the browser uses a default color for the background, which is transparent. To fix that, we need to add RGB and parentheses to our color value. Save the file, refresh the page. There you go. Now it works. Okay, now the question is, why do we need to use these cryptic values at all? Because it seems that keywords like gold or blue are more friendly and easier to remember and use. Now, one of the reasons is that when we use keywords like gold or red to set our colors, we're limited to somewhere nearly 150 different color values. But when we use the RGB or hex formats to set our colors, we have more fine-grained control over the colors. And we have nearly 16 million different colors and shades available for us to use. So you can use RGB and hex values in any place where a color value is expected. For example, to set text color. So select the color format based on your needs. Now let me show you how to add a background image for an element with CSS. A background image in CSS is simply an image that appears behind the content of an HTML element. It's like the wallpaper on your desktop or the background on your phone's home screen. To set a background image, we use the CSS property called background image. Then, as a value, we use the URL function to set where our image is located. Here, we can put a link with a full path to an image available on the internet. I'll paste this URL. You can use it too if you want. Or, if you have an image in your website's folder, you can just use its name here instead, like this. But I'll stick to the URL. And I'm gonna end this declaration with a semicolon. Save the file, refresh the page. There you go. Now our div has a background image. Look how the browser repeats this image. By default, background images repeat both vertically and horizontally to fill the entire area of the element. We can change that with the background repeat property. Let's set it to no repeat. Now our image should be used only once. Save the file, refresh the page. There you go. The image is rendered only once, but the rest of the background is filled with this solid orange color. That's because we've set both the background color and background image. The background image covers the background color. So in the areas where there is no background image, we'll see this solid color. This means that we can use the background color as a fallback in case our image doesn't load. Let me put a random character into the image so that the URL points to a non-existing location. Save the file, refresh the page. Now the browser cannot load the image and fills all the background with this solid color. But let me put back the valid URL. We can configure our image to only repeat across the x-axis. For that, I'm going to change the value to repeat x. Save the file, refresh the page, something like this. And also, if we want, we can configure it to only repeat across the y-axis. For that, I'm going to change the x character to y. Save the file, refresh the page, there you go. And I'm going to set it to no repeat. Great. Now, if we want to change the position of our background image, we can use the background position property. Let's move it 200 pixels from the left and 50 pixels from the top. Save the file, refresh the page, there you go. Now the image is 200 pixels to the right and 50 pixels to the bottom. We can also change the size of our background image with the background size property. I'll set the width to 400 pixels and the height should change automatically in proportion. Save the file, refresh the page. Now the image is proportionally bigger. If we really want, we can set also the height as the second value. So something like 50 pixels. And we also need to have the space between the width and the height, otherwise it won't work. Save the file, refresh the page. Yeah, something like this. But I'm gonna remove the height value here. Save the file, refresh the page, now it's better. So, to add a solid background to your HTML elements, use the background color property. Use either a keyword, a hex, or RGB value. To use an image as a background, use the background image property, and then the URL function. Inside this function, specify either a link or a local path to an image. Use the background repeat, position, and size properties to configure your background image. And this is how you add a background to your elements.
If this video was helpful, subscribe to get more. Now check out this next video.